I know why you're all here. An age flooded with noise, get-rich-quick myths, and complex financial jargon. You're craving a map, some kind of certainty. You're hoping that I, an old man who's been around for nearly a century, can pull a yellowed secret formula out of my pocket with the mysterious equation for financial freedom written on it. You probably imagine that somewhere in a secret room at Berkshire, Warren and I are hunched over a supercomputer every day. They're running discounted cash flow models with hundreds of variables, trying to calculate the intrinsic value of General Motors down to the 5th decimal place. Well, I'm standing here today to completely shatter that fantasy for you. In my entire life, I have never seen Warren Buffett calculate the value of a company in that step-by-step business school fashion. Not once. Our approach to valuation is so rough, it would probably give your finance professor a heart attack. The investment opportunity isn't the kind where you can see its intrinsic value is miles above its market price without needing a pen and paper, just using basic common sense and mental math so cheap that it feels like you're stealing. Then we unhesitatingly toss it into the basket labeled too hard. And then we go to sleep. And we sleep very well. You might think that's too sloppy, too unprofessional. On the contrary, this is the highest level of professionalism. Chasing that kind of fake numerical precision is a form of intellectual self-anesthesia, a most dangerous kind of arrogance. It tricks you into thinking you have control over risk, when in reality you just used a pile of well-packaged assumptions to mask your fundamental ignorance of the real world. Lord Keynes, a truly brilliant man, gave us the ultimate proverb long ago. It is better to be vaguely right than precisely wrong. The wisdom in that single sentence is worth more than the entire CFA curriculum combined. The human brain has a fatal flaw. We are naturally biased toward things that are quantifiable and look precise, while we systematically ignore qualitative factors that are fuzzy but far more important. Let me give you a real-world example. The designers of California's water system had two types of data on hand. The one was a set of very detailed, down-to-the-day rainfall records from the past few decades. The other was vague information derived from sources like tree rings about a once-in-a-millennium drought that occurred centuries ago. What did they do? They chose the former because it was precise and could be plugged into a model. They ignored the latter because it was vague. As a result, they designed a fragile system incapable of handling an extreme drought, that being precisely wrong. In investing, countless people make this same mistake every single day. They stare at the earnings per share on a financial statement, precise down to the penny, yet they ignore the rot in the company's culture. They calculate a precise debt-to-equity ratio. They fail to see the fuzzy threat of a new technology that's about to make the company's product obsolete. This isn't investing. It's playing a numbers game. It's using academic rigor to embrace real-world bankruptcy. There's all wisdom come from the classroom at Harvard Business School, but from the most expensive and brutal classroom there is, the real world. That every mistake you make is an expensive tuition payment. Only the biggest fools pay the same tuition twice. I paid a lot of that tuition when I was young. I once invested in a company that made electronic equipment. Our products seemed technologically advanced at the time. Then, overnight, the magnetic tape was invented. Our product instantly became a pile of scrap metal nobody wanted. We didn't even see what hit us. Another time, I was a director of a company that distributed farm machinery. The company's accounting statements always looked great, profitable year after year. But we had one perpetual question: where's the cash? I'll tell you where the cash was. It had turned into those sun-beaten, constantly depreciating used tractors and harvesters sitting in the backyard. That's how I learned firsthand what a lousy business is. It's a bottomless pit for capital. Every dollar of nominal profit you make has to be immediately reinvested into more fixed assets and inventory. You can never truly, freely put the profit in your own pocket. The most classic lesson came from the Baltimore department store that Warren and I bought. We were young, then still infatuated with Ben Graham's cigar butt theory, buying awful companies at ridiculously cheap prices. Looked at the department store's balance sheet and thought its assets were worth far more than the stock price. It was practically a giveaway. We bought it gleefully, thinking we'd gotten a huge bargain. And the result? Didn't buy a business. We bought a ticket to an arena. And only after we got inside did we realize it was a never-ending, bloody gladiatorial combat. The department store business is fundamentally like that. You have no differentiated product. Your competitor is right across the street. The only way to compete is to see who can burn more money and endure more losses. You spend $1 million on renovations today. He'll spend $2 million tomorrow. You offer a 20% discount. He'll dare to offer 30% off. That's not a business. It's slow motion suicide. We barely got out of it without a profit or a loss. But it took a hell of an effort. We learned a lesson worth billions. It is far better to buy a wonderful company at a fair price than a fair company at a wonderful price. That was the evolution of our thinking. Learned the foundation from Graham. Margin of safety. Treating a stock as ownership in a business and taking advantage of the market's irrationality. These are timeless truths. But we also move beyond Graham's limitations. Ben Graham was a great man, but he had his blind spots. He spent his whole life looking for companies trading below their liquidation value. He never fully grasped that the value of a company like Coca-Cola comes primarily from the intangible things that can't be precisely quantified on a balance sheet. The brand, the distribution channels, and the deep-seated habits of its consumers. His own single most successful investment, Geico, made him more money than all his other investments combined. Yet he chalked it up to a lucky exception instead of distilling a deeper principle from it. He, like us, was constantly learning. It took us decades and countless mistakes before we slowly evolved from monkeys picking up cigar butts to connoisseurs who could appreciate a great business. It came to understand what a kind old miner once told me. Charlie, the great mine is hard to ruin. What he meant is that a truly excellent business has an extremely high tolerance for error. Its moat is so wide that even if the management makes a dumb mistake or two, even if the macroeconomy goes into recession, it will still survive and continue to generate value. That is the highest form of margin of safety. Not just a margin of safety in price, but a margin of safety in the very nature of the business itself. You understand things at this level, many decisions become incredibly simple. For example, why did we sell our perfectly decent savings and loan and buy a massive amount of Freddie Mac stock? Because we sat down and compared them. And we realized that while our business was good, Freddie Mac's business was excellent. Their business model, focusing only on single-family home loans with conforming limits, effectively diversified risk. Their scale, a vast network of brokers and standardized processes, created a cost advantage no one could match. Their market position, a de facto duopoly. When we saw all that, the decision became as clear as 1 + 1 = 2. To move our capital from the 90-point opportunity to the 99-point opportunity. Did that require a complex model? No, that just required honesty and rationality. And now, I want to talk about the most fundamental, most central thing behind all of this. If you walk out of this room tonight and forget everything else I've said, I want you to remember what's next. The success or failure of all your investments, the quality of all your life decisions, ultimately comes down to whether you understand and can master one thing: your own psychology. The battlefield of investing is not on Wall Street or on a stock chart. It's inside your own head. There's a never-ending war between you and your own irrational instincts. Let me tell you another story about Graham. He once gathered his best students. We were all there. He gave us a true or false quiz with questions that seemed simple. At the end, out of that group of geniuses with IQs all north of 150, only one person got more than half right. He admitted he guessed on most of them. Why did this happen? Because in every single question, Graham had cleverly embedded a psychological trap. He wanted to teach us in the most direct and humiliating way possible. If you do not understand the inherent flaws of human psychology, your high IQ, the far from being an advantage, will become your greatest curse. It will make you exceptionally good at finding plausible sounding but utterly foolish reasons for your own dumb decisions. Let's dissect a few of the most common wealth-destroying psychological biases. The first and most powerful is incentive-caused bias. Never, ever underestimate the power of incentives. Nyaka. If you see someone behaving strangely, you don't have to think they're crazy. You just have to ask yourself, what is their incentive structure? 9 times out of 10, you'll find the answer. Look at the case of Lloyd's of London. They paid their underwriters a commission based on the volume of premiums they wrote. What was the result? The underwriters, chasing their own commissions, signed countless toxic insurance policies that ultimately brought the company to its knees. Were they bad people? Not necessarily. They were simply responding rationally to the money in their own pockets. It's the same with bank loan officers. The banker's bonus is tied only to the volume of loans he makes this year, with no regard for whether those loans go bad 7 or 8 years later. Do you think he's going to put risk control first? Not a chance. So, when you analyze a company, you must investigate its compensation and incentive systems like a detective. Is it rewarding true value creation? Or is it rewarding short-term, superficial, or even harmful behavior? The second social proof tendency, or what you call the herd effect. Humans are social animals who evolved over millions of years. Deep in our genes is an instruction: follow the crowd. On the ancient savannah, if everyone suddenly started running, you'd better start running too, because a saber-toothed tiger was probably coming. The guy who stopped to think did not get to pass on his genes. The modern financial market, this instinct is deadly. When everyone is going crazy for a concept or a stock, that is often the point of maximum danger. Conversely, when everyone is selling in a panic and there's blood in the streets, that is the moment of maximum opportunity. The huge part of our success comes from the discipline we forced upon ourselves to fight this instinct. When we saw the entire insurance industry engaging in a destructive price war, we said, this is insane, not playing. And we just sat there holding cash and waited patiently. It's a lonely feeling. It's uncomfortable. You feel like a fool who missed the big party. History has proven again and again that the people who leave the party when it's at its peak are the ones who win in the end. The third, overconfidence tendency, especially in areas outside your circle of competence. The most dangerous people in the world are not the ignorant, but those who are passionately confident about a subject on which they know just a little. This is why we constantly stress the circle of competence. Warren and I don't pretend to know everything, don't understand biotechnology, so we don't touch it. We can't figure out the long-term competitive landscape of a high-tech company, so we stay away. We are very aware that our circle of competence is small, but we make damn sure to stay in the center of that circle instead of playing with fire at the edges. Admitting your ignorance is the beginning of wisdom. And one of the biggest problems of our age is that too many people are faking deep insights with opinions they borrowed from others, the world. So, how have we survived in the world so full of traps? We've built an anti-fragile operating system. The first, we practice inversion. The great algebraist Jacobi said, invert, always invert. When everyone else is thinking, how can I succeed as an investor? We ask ourselves, what behaviors will cause us to fail completely? That we make a list of those behaviors, using high leverage, making big bets in areas we don't understand, trading frequently, chasing market fads, buying a good company without regard to valuation. The only thing we have to do is avoid everything on that list at all costs. You can successfully avoid all the stupid mistakes. You will naturally end up with a pretty good result without even needing to be particularly brilliant. Second, we embrace extreme patience. We think of ourselves as hunters, not farmers. The farmer has to toil every day, but a hunter spends most of his time waiting. He can lie in wait for weeks, even months, without moving just for that one perfect can't-miss shot. There are no suitable opportunities. We sit on our cash, reading and thinking. An industry that's obsessed with trading every second. This makes us seem like freaks. Know that your lifetime investment return will likely be determined by a mere handful of great decisions. You must preserve your ammunition and your sanity for those few decisions. Finally, we are committed to being lifelong learning machines. I'm nearly 100 years old, but I still try to go to bed a little wiser than I was when I woke up. And I don't just read financial news. I read history, psychology, biology, physics. I try to find the core mental models from these great disciplines that can explain how the world really works. For example, from physics, I learned the concepts of critical mass and feedback loops. From biology, I learned about ecological niches and evolutionary adaptation. When you have a lattice work of about 100 of these core models in your head, you can look at a problem from multiple dimensions and see layers that others miss. You will no longer be the man with a hammer to whom everything looks like a nail. I recommend you all read Garrett Hardin's Living Within Limits. That book contains the condensed wisdom of a lifetime of thinking. It will make you understand why any exponential growth in a finite system must inevitably end in collapse. This one seemingly simple idea can help you avoid 90% of the traps in investing. So, my friends, especially the young ones, the advice I want to give you has nothing to do with the next 10-bagger stock. The first survive. In your life and your investment journey, the most important goal is to never get wiped out. This means you must avoid devastating risks at all costs. Never use high leverage. Leverage is a wicked tool. It can amplify your gains, but it can also ruin you beyond repair when you are most vulnerable. The second, build character. Only work with and invest with people you absolutely trust. Life is hard enough as it is. You don't need to waste your time playing games with people you can't rely on. The good character is in itself the best form of risk control. The third, constantly invest in yourself, in your own brain. This is the only business in the world that is guaranteed to pay off. Spend your time and money acquiring real wisdom that can never be taken away from you. You have a toolbox full of effective mental models. You possess the most powerful weapon for dealing with this complex world. The complex formulas. Forget the noise of market predictions. Forget the fantasy of getting rich overnight. Return to the most basic, simple common sense. Find good businesses that you can understand. Make sure the management is honest and capable. Buy them at a reasonable price you can afford, and then leave the rest to the greatest business partner of all time. This is all we do. It's simple, but that doesn't mean it's easy. It requires you to have the rarest qualities in this world: discipline, patience, the ability to remain rational when everyone else has lost their minds. Okay, I've said more than enough.